And welcome to InDemand. I'm Trudy Kerr.
And I'm Jane Dennis, and tonight we are talking about women in science. Science is what drives humanity forward. And with girls outperforming boys in schools, why aren't there more women in science? Tonight we talk to two female scientists to understand why it isn't the case.
Absolutely. This evening's guests are two women qualified and experience in the field of science. We have mathematics, science and physics expert turned successful restaurateur Amy Talbot and the respected science professor Irene Sriha Aquilina. Irene, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's absolutely lovely to speak to you and to get to know you better. I think my first question, I don't have a lot of knowledge of the field of science.
A lot.
I don't have any knowledge of the field of science. Thanks so much, Jane. But first up, how did you end up, because you're a professor in science, how did you end up being that? And was it unusual for a girl to get into that field? How did you come to be where you are now?
It's all over the world. It isn't usual for girls to take up science. There's a problem, for example, in engineering, that all over the world there's about 10% only of women in engineering. In science, it's a bit more. In mathematics, I would say more. And the reason being that we can work without support. I can use my brain, my computer, my contacts abroad, and Malta being what it is, you know, we're isolated, we're few. Even within the mathematics department, we're so few. So we don't work together so much.
Right.
Okay.
But so, for instance, my brother is a engineer, a mechanical chartered engineer, and he had been saying exactly the same thing. Very, very few women in that field. And is that, am I understanding you correctly, is that because women are not lent towards that field, or is it because it's not an attractive field for women to go into?
I
or just it's not
would
women?
say there's a cultural reason imposed on us.
Okay.
Indirectly. I'll tell you a small anecdote.
Yes.
Please.
I've read about this American girl who this year got a prize for designing a toy for girls. She's an engineer, and she realized that she found one particular subject difficult. She was top of the class in all others, and because of this, she was going to give up. But then she bartered with some friends of hers. She'll help them with one subject, they'll help her with that. She realized that when that girls are not given the same toys as boys. Boys are given, say, Lego, and girls are given something. Anyway, she tried to make up this toy. But when she started to ask for sponsorships, the reply she obtained was, please choose something from this area, which were dolls, pink boxes, and so on. For girls, otherwise they won't sell. But she managed to get money. I don't know how, because these days there are these systems where you ask people for 10 euros each.
Crowdfunding. Yeah.
Wow.
And she managed to get the right amount. She went to Silicon Valley with her prototype covered with a napkin, and as she was going in, the other contestants, who were all men, said, did you bring, you know, she wanted to protect her intellectual property
Yes,
rights.
yes,
Of
yeah.
course.
And they told her, did you bring us cookies?
Oh, did they really? Really?
You see, I mean, this is the...
Yes.
So this is right
She
from
didn't
ground
mind
up.
the ridicule, and
Yes.
she got through, and
Brilliant.
and this year she sold not 5,000, what they asked her for, but 20,000. So she's really
for
pleased.
her.
I haven't seen these. They're called Goldie Blocks.
Oh, okay.
They're very similar to Lego, but she made some research and realized that girls like reading more than boys. So they have this book, and the book gives instructions,
Right.
and this conveyor belt, which is pink, by the way. I've seen it on a video on the internet, but I haven't seen this toy in Malta yet. So let's see.
Amazing.
Yes.
So what you're saying is that actually the women not being in science is right from the ground up, is right from sort of gender orientation from a small child.
Right.
Now, I did have Lego. I loved Lego. I had a lot of Lego, and I would build, you know,
Most
skyscrapers.
probably
and all
because
sorts of
you
things.
played with
Two
your brother.
brothers.
That's it.
That's true. I had two
The
brothers.
same happened with my daughter, yes. I mean,
But
they're-
these things happen all the time, don't they? I mean, I notice that my husband, when he's in the car, will say, oh, Victor, look at the motorbike, or Daisy, look at something that would generally be thought of as a female thing. So just the things that we do that we don't know that we're doing, you know, Daisy, do you want to come shopping? Victor, look at the motorbike. So
Right.
all of these stereotypes are
You're
being
right.
driven right from the grassroots. So is science a good subject for people to get involved in, generally?
Well, and we avoided the question, how did you get into it? 'Cause
Okay.
we kind of went round the houses.
How did I get into it? I like the first thing, so it was difficult for me to choose.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, my mother was saying, "Ooh, how I wish I would have a chemist, a pharmacist." For you know, one of my daughters, we're 4 girls and a boy.
Wow.
So I would like to have a pharmacist in the family. You know, they earn money, you know, and they have you know, sort of a
Status,
status. And so I went in for chemistry and biology. I was 16 when I entered university. First year. At that time, it wasn't like it is today. We had all the freedom in the world. We could choose whatever we like. So I had mathematics, but I didn't have applied mathematics. So I went in for applied mathematics just for fun.
For fun, like you do, applied mathematics, because that's loads of fun, isn't it?
And at the end of the year, we were about 130, and only about 24 made it. And I made it, so... and the
To carry on, you mean? You made it to stay...
to the second year,
Okay.
you see.
Oh, that's how it works.
And the dean called me and said, do you know what you got in physics and mathematics? And I said, oh, I don't care about those. My subjects are chemistry and biology. How did I do in those? Because I want to become a pharmacist, you know. He said, forget
because
them.
my mum said...
That's where the money is.
Exactly. And he said, forget that. And do you know what you got in physics and maths? I said, it doesn't, you know, I thought I did badly, because you never know. In physics and maths, you never know that you did everything correctly. It could be really off the point, and you would have obtained a bad answer, a bad method, you know. He said, you got top marks in each, so don't change. Change to these subjects.
Wow. How did your mum take it?
No, they didn't like it, but they accepted then, because then it made life easier for me.
So what can you do? I think my question was, you know, is it a good career choice? So you then ended up being in science and maths.
You know, it has become a better and better career choice. By the way, when I was young, I was thought to be mad to do a degree, because women weren't allowed to, married women weren't allowed to work with government, with university, you know.
Gosh.
So it was only in 1981 that the law changed.
When you say they weren't allowed to work...
I mean, they were forced to resign.
Yes, if you became pregnant, you were forced to resign.
Are you serious?
No, if you get married, before you get pregnant.
Okay, before you... So you might not even want to have a baby. So once you got married...
Once you get married...
And that was law?
It was a law, right.
Good grief.
And in
1981.
only in 1981 it
I didn't know
changed.
that.
Yes, yes. And I always wanted to do what I liked. And I thought I would get married, you know, anyway. So I'll do what I like. If I get married, I won't work. I'll do like the other women, you know, stay at home. I did that for 6 years. It was terrible. To bring up my children, you know.
Yes, yes.
I decided to stay at home. I love my children and I loved staying with them. But, you know, confined in a house for 6 years, only going out to have a coffee somewhere, and, you know, it's not healthy, I would say.
Gosh. So then how did you get from there? Just looking at the timeline there, so you studied, you got your degree.
I did my first degree,
you got
my
married.
master's, and then I went. So I had to resign from university because I was at university. So I had to resign when I was, I think, 24. I got married and went to teach at a college, at a very good college, De La Salle College in Malta.
Yes, yes.
And I stayed there for 20 years, you know, until my children were doing their O-levels, and then I went back to university.
And then you went back. So was maths, your mum made the connection between chemistry and biology to be a pharmacist, and that was a good career choice. You moved into maths and physics because that's where your strength was. And bringing that forward to today as well, is that a good career move to move into?
It is. Even in my days, it was a good career move if you decide not to get married. For example, as soon as I obtained my degree, at the time, the British were in charge of the airports.
Sorry about that.
In a good way.
No, I'm joking.
And the chief there sent his secretary to my house to tell, you know, sort of hat-picking, come and become a pilot.
Really?
Provided you don't get married for 11 years. And once you get married, even after 11 years, you have to give up being a pilot. So I said, what's the point? I think I made a mistake, however. I should have become a pilot and then left and then become an academic afterwards.
Yes.
I would have had both experiences.
Wow.
But at that time, that's not what the decision I took.
And we're talking about very, very different times, and actually not
But
that
not so long ago.
Not long ago, you see. This is the point. I mean, in Malta, we took longer, not that in Britain. I mean, you come from England, do you?
Yes.
Not that in Britain there are many. For example, in Britain there are very few women physicists in universities.
So this is actually a global issue. It's not a Malta-specific issue. It's a gender issue.
Depends,
Is
you
it
know,
just
like
not sexy?
Spain and Italy are not so bad.
Are they not?
No.
Do you think there's a reason that in those countries that it's not such a problem and it is in others? I know in the States, 13% of senior scientists now is only 13% of women, which is
women.
for the
English-speaking.
English-speaking, yes. But you would think in America that it would be very different, but it's not the case at all.
No.
And just listening to your story, because we're kind of off topic a little bit, but you've chosen to be a scientist. You went into the field of science and you decided that's what you wanted to do, and you've also managed to get to the position that you're in, really against all odds, because there was so
against
much
odds, I can tell you. Because it's not done willfully. I am very much respected at the university. However, at the beginning, people look at you as a woman, not as a
scientist. Now
I didn't have that problem when I was a student, you know, because my classmates knew my value.
Yes. I want to pick up on that
I'm
point.
actually going to stop you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Because guess what? That's the end of the first section.
I've got a question to ask you.
We'll come back to that question in just a second, but we have to take a short break. And Irene, it's just absolutely delightful listening to you. Ladies and gentlemen, whatever you do, don't go, don't change the station, stay right here and come back and join us in just a few minutes.
Welcome back to In Demand, where we are talking about the subject of women in science, and we've been joined by the lovely Amy Talbot, who was in science but moved away from that field, and we'll be discussing that now, I believe.
Absolutely, right now. And I know you, I mean, interestingly enough, Amy, I know you from your restaurant, from your shop and your restaurant.
So
and
do
I think
I.
everybody does, and it's doing exceedingly well. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But that's not where you originated from.
No.
So tell us a little bit of background of that story, how you got into science, what you did, and then how you came out of science as well. So we understand a little bit about you.
Yeah. So first of all, I went into science as my former lecturer
Which we just discovered, fantastic.
was saying, you know, parents, you know, science, it's a good
dear,
subject.
so was it your parents that pushed
Yeah,
it? Yes.
as well, yeah. Initially, I was inclined more towards English and geography, so it wasn't actually my free choice.
Which actually are poles apart, if I'm right in thinking. You use
yeah,
different parts of
quite.
the brain.
Yeah, yeah, it's arts. Well, I have a mix of both, I guess, because I
Yes.
also play the piano, so...
So you're more inclined to go to the humanities, but you were kind of being pushed into the science world.
Kind of, yes.
Okay. Sorry,
Encouraged.
Mum.
Let's use the
Mum
word
and Dad. I'm sure it was a free choice. I'm sure it's fine.
Well, I don't regret it,
No.
really, but yes. So, yeah, I went for maths and physics. Struggled. It was quite a difficult degree. And you live life completely different from your fellow students who have
Do you?
Why?
a lighter...
Why? What's the
well,
implication?
others were going out, partying, and we were studying at home.
Really?
Basically, so yes, it's quite demanding, of course, and it takes sacrifice and...
Well, I would imagine that to be the case, but I don't know that's the case. And what your fellow students, were they predominantly male or female?
In my year, it was more females, actually.
Was it?
Yes.
Yes.
In my year. Just
In your
Yeah.
science?
We were about 13 opposed to 9, something
Okay.
similar. So it was a very small group.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. So then you graduated?
Yes, I
and
graduated.
where did you take science then? What did you do?
I started working in a pharmaceutical, in a lab. We were testing pills, basically. I loved it.
I like this idea of testing pills. I loved it. In a scientific way.
No, but well, then for personal reasons, I decided to move to something different, and I went to work with the government in air quality, where I used then more physics, and I loved it as well.
What's to love? I love this idea. You know, I loved it. What's to love about
Well,
it?
it's very challenging. You learn new things because really you don't actually quite use everything that you're taught at university. So you learn new things, you learn how to adapt what you've learned and maybe change it around, and you research.
But Jane's raised a really good point, because I have to say, I mean, it's lovely speaking to both of you, and really dispelled my preconception of what science and scientists are about, and particularly talking to you, Irene, and just your story. But I sort of, when I think of science, probably because I was rubbish at it. Although having said that, that's not true. I was in top sect for all my science subjects, and I chose humanity. I chose art subjects. But I found it a challenge.
That's right. No, it's
Sorry.
okay.
But I found it a challenge. But are you suggesting that even though it was difficult, that you actually get a thrill out of science?
Yes, yes.
Talk us through that thrill. in a non-pill way.
Well, first of all, the fact that you manage to, you know, when men look at, it's a woman, she's in science, and then you actually manage to succeed. That is already one thing which, you know, gives you a kick.
Does it?
Yeah.
But is it problem solving that's the thrill, or is it understanding something, or
It's a mix of both, really, and actually even the fact that you know you're struggling, but you actually make it through. It's like a conquest.
Yes, it's a journey.
So,
This is stuff we don't know about. Analysts say, apparently, that it's good to bring more women into science because they are looking, this is some of the research indicates, that women look at problems in a different way. So the brains aren't necessarily wired differently. Yeah. Women are, you know, every bit as capable of science as men are, but they look at problem solving in a research basis in a different way. Has that been your experience?
Yes, probably yes.
Do the men tend to look at things in this way and the women look at them in a different way, or do you all mix up your ideas?
It depends, really, depends, because even if you are your supervisor is teaching you, then you are obviously influenced to see things as he is seeing them. But then you always have your point of view.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So then how did you go from science and I'm presuming that you then went from the government position, then did you go to the restaurant?
To my own business, yes.
Which is so different.
Yeah.
So a ton of questions. You know, you're talking about the thrill of science, which I'm still trying to understand. Sorry, I'll get there. But you're talking about the thrill of science, and then you're talking about going to owning your own restaurant. I mean, that's a huge leap.
Yeah.
Is it because you hated science? Really?
Definitely not.
That you really didn't like it?
No, I did love it, but then I found out. My husband had another shop, so I used to help him out. And I found another passion, basically. Meeting people, learning about wine, learning about craft beer. So.
But see, wine is a master of science. And I know this.
Yes,
I've been taught
yes, as well.
It's chemistry,
baking
isn't it?
Baking is a
chemistry,
mystery.
isn't it?
Baking is just something that no one should do. I'm sorry, mystery. But you're talking about, you immediately went into to wine and a reference to something which probably relates again back to science.
Yes, in fact, the first time I visited a winery and they took me to their own lab, I was fascinated and I could, I know, yes, of course, I know the instruments, and they were like, oh, so you're in science as well. A woman. Yeah.
Even. There was one question I was going to ask earlier on, Ask Irene, and I'm going to ask it to you because I guess you've still got many friends who are in the scientific field who are women.
Yes.
You're aware of the Nobel scientist Tim Hunt, who made a statement recently. Did you hear the statement? Which was, 3 things happen when they, which are women, are in the lab. You fall in love with them. They fall in love with you, and when you criticise them, they cry. This is very well publicised. I just wondered what was the general feeling. It was quite well publicised. Did you hear about this?
No, I haven't.
No, and I wondered if people... You're nodding, Irene. You'd heard about it.
And she shook her head as soon as she heard it as well. Well done, Irene.
Is your experience?
Well, I guess it depends on the day. You could have days which you are a bit more emotional, and you could have days. No, I mean, when it comes to criticism, it really depends. I always feel that you can say things you can say the same thing in 2 different ways, and I try to practice that myself. So I don't like it too much when people just go about, telling you off in a not so nice way.
But I think what he's saying there is that women are kind of emotionally weaker and that you need to be less weak when you're in a research or in scientific field. Do you think that's the case?
I wouldn't say so, no. I wouldn't say crying is a sign of weakness either. Crying is just crying.
But in the reference to that, and I actually hadn't read it or heard it before you mentioned that, and horrified. It suggests that there would be reasons to cry in the lab. Why would you cry in the lab? I'm suddenly kind of going, what's this science all about?
You would cry everywhere. I feel like crying every day when I'm managing people and their problems.
That's true.
So
that's true.
I believe that now, today, I have more problems running my own business rather than when I was in science.
Do you miss it? Do you miss the science?
I do, yes. Sometimes, yes, I do.
And all of the girls that you were with, because you were primarily with girls, which is we'll point out, is unusual in terms of the statistics.
Yeah.
Are they all still in the scientific field?
Not all, no. But most are. Some maybe went for teaching, others maybe in betting, but still linked.
And is it because we were talking to Irene about this earlier? Is it a good career choice? Is it a good career path, or is it quite limiting? Because it sounds, for me, if you see it on a CV and talk to people, it sounds like a very worthy thing to do. It makes somebody sound as though they're intelligent, but how does that work in terms of... It does,
yes,
I think, it makes you sound smart, but actually, what can you do with that in terms of a career choice?
Well, I would say, I don't know if you agree with me, that in Malta it is a bit limiting.
It's harder.
Yes. You do tend, because obviously you have some expectations then, so even wage-wise, you say, I've been through so much, I expect,
Yes, yes.
And well, it's not easy in Malta, I think, and not a lot of companies actually acknowledge the importance of science in their business. So,
Can you name me, just because I am really trying to get my head around the science field, because I'm so sort of not knowledgeable of this. If you did train in science, if you became either a doctorate or just graduated from a degree or whatever, and you decided to go out into the world of industry, what kind of roles are you looking at? What are the opportunity jobs? I immediately think, oh, you'd go and work for a pharmacy company.
Yes.
But is that the only thing that would be available to you?
No. First of all, there's research, which you can continue doing at university and contribute towards a particular field that you are interested in. And there are a lot of positions in general companies that you could give your input in, like analyzing statistics, analyzing data. For example, my sister is a statistician, and she's in a company where she gathers all the data, sees what goes wrong, what can go wrong. So it's applied statistics in that way, which is science too. So.
And when you talk about research, is that all lab-based, or do you, I mean, maybe not so much in this country, but do you get to go out and walk around and, pick plants? And I always think of them, wearing those outfits and going, oh, look at me.
Well, that's biology. I wouldn't know so much about biology. But, for example, when I was working with the government, we used to take samples of air particles, study what kind of pollution there was around, measures how we could reduce pollution. So,
see, these things, for me, these contribute society directly. They seem such worthy things, and they're things that the rest of us don't see anything about or understand how these decisions are made based on this evidence that's behind us, and it's not promoted enough, I don't think.
No, and most people actually think that it's even worse than, because I used to go to meetings in Brussels, for example, and when you used to compare, it's not actually that bad, the air quality in Malta, for example. So, there are
how bad
streets
is
which
other people's air quality?
Listen, ladies, I'm having a wonderful time understanding a little bit more about science, and I can't wait.
We get our PhD after this.
Absolutely, I'm going to qualify. I can't wait to come back from the break and to discuss all of these topics with both of you. We're going to take a little tiny break, just a couple of minutes. Go make yourself a cup of tea, pour yourself a glass of wine, and come back here with us just in a few.
Welcome back to InDemand, where we are talking about women in science to two scientific women, would you believe? One, Professor Irene, and the lovely Amy, who's now a restaurant owner but was an amazing scientist also. So we're talking about, ladies, what it's like to be a woman in that field. So in a society that's kind of seemingly impressed by celebrity these days, and I think it is, that's a global phenomenon, I hate to say it, but, many little girls and little boys too want to grow up to be famous, but not really knowing famous in what. It's about being famous rather than that being a byproduct of actually doing something. Do you think science is seen as a viable option, something that we can entice children into? What do you think?
These days, because of CIS and NCIS and
CIS.
the thrillers,
Criminal.
Oh, CSI, yes.
CSI,
yes, that's all right.
Investigating
I thought it was
criminals.
a
There are
scientific
different ones,
acronym.
right. There are girls who are taking chemistry
Okay.
because they see the. There's always this chemist analyzing.
And they're always good looking.
They're always.
And it's also kind of
depends.
sexy,
In those white suits.
looks and brains.
That's very interesting, actually, because there's a lot of British TV shows that are about forensic science as well.
Right.
So I hadn't thought about that as an influencer.
But from our field, from mathematics, physics, and statistics, they go into gaming, and gaming is so popular.
Right.
Betting, betting companies.
But
are so
do they
popular.
make that connection? I feel as though science
No,
is this.
because what we teach is, for example, in my area, we teach about design of programs, error codes, and everything ties up to
So there is a connection made between the practical benefits of what you do, rather, because I think of science, and again, this is what we don't know, is that I think of science as you go into it, it's a passion, it's a complicated subject in and of itself, but there's a tangible link into how it contributes to society and a career choice. Is that what you're saying?
I think the girls who choose science don't make that connection at the beginning. No, they go into it because they love the subject. They get a shock as soon as they start university.
Yeah,
Because it's all different.
A big one.
It's all different. What we do, we never... I teach about 10 courses, and I never write a number on the board. It's all different. It's constructs, it's logic, it's, you know, cause and effect, input, output, some reasoning in between. It's a language.
Yes.
We translate all the time, you know. You're given this is the premise. Translate, translate, translate. Keep on translating until you see it. Once you see it, go back to mathematics and give the answer.
So you're saying
know?
that
Well,
for
okay, that's it.
girls-
That's a very interesting method.
It is very interesting, and you were saying for girls that they don't see the connection between the beginning of their time at university and the output of that. And I have to say, obviously I'm a girl too, and I took a vocational degree. I took a graphic design degree. You knew what you were going to be. You started your degree, day one, you knew what you were going to be right at the end there. And for me, that whole idea of going into a theory and a discussion and everything that you've just described and possibly not knowing what you're going to come out at the other end, for me, that's terrifying because it's not a vocational, it's a degree, it's a discovery.
But if you understand what mathematics is, it permeates everything, you know. It's been here since the Greeks or before, you know. We've had mathematics always in different countries, in different areas, all over the globe, being created independently, discovered independently, you know, not in groups. And then they realized that maybe they're expressing it in different languages, but it's the same thing. So when heads of state meet, for example, anywhere, they clash on everything. They clash on culture, they clash on religion, but they cannot clash on mathematics.
Because it's black and white.
Because it's either correct, right, true, or false.
And that's and just to come back to again, sorry, I'm getting just thoughts. You were talking about this sort of celebrity and kids, and I was thinking as you were talking about the Greeks, and I was thinking to myself, truly think of somebody who's a science or mathematician, and Isaac Newton, who has changed the way the world works and is understood.
He was wrong though, wasn't he?
Do you have a mobile phone?
Exactly. I do have a mobile phone. I wish I didn't.
Do you know what it is? What it is? It's a system of equations. It's mathematics. Without mathematics, there's nothing. No television, no monitors, no displays.
So then, how do you encourage young people to understand the value of science and maths rather than aspiring to be Kim Kardashian?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, Isaac Newton might have done a bit more for the world than Kim Kardashian has. Do you know what I mean? How do you encourage that, Amy? How do you encourage that?
Well, I think first of all, to be realistic, you need to know what opportunities you will have in future. So, of course, it's the opportunities that are given by the companies, because when you go to choose a course, one thing which you do is flip through the newspaper. If you don't see any science positions, you might be inclined not to choose science.
The vocation is important.
So yes, I mean, when you see that, yes, there are opportunities, yes, there are positions, there are companies looking for scientists, then it's a further, I think, incentive to go for it.
But in Malta, how realistic is that, to have a career choice in Malta? Is it limiting? We did a show recently about having to go off island, and that there's a certain amount of experience that can be had in Malta, but certainly in a specific field, you have to go off island in order to develop that. Are there the opportunities to grow in a subject so massive and intense, and which has many, many levels? Is that possible to do in Malta?
Yes, we have an example here, no?
And they're limited opportunities.
PhD.
You know what the problem is? That when, until you realize what your potential, what you can do, years pass. So when I did my PhD, I was so excited about what I discovered, what I created, because that's what you do in a PhD. You have to do new mathematics. I did new mathematics. And
There is still new mathematics, yes.
What is new mathematics?
I mean, mathematics that has not been discovered by anyone else. I mean, all PhDs are like that.
I'm having my brain blown out today. Good grief.
They should be like that.
They should, but new mathematics is another level.
And being in Malta, you know, is a bit of a disadvantage. However, eventually, after about 20 years, my work was discovered. And, you know, it's a contagious disease, you know. You get them in China, downloading my papers, in America,
wow.
in England, and all of a sudden, there's this interest, and they're expanding my work, so I'm very
You are
excited.
a scientific celebrity.
I'm not
That's
really.
amazing.
You know, I went into chemistry in advert because I was giving this talk, and there was this fellow of the Royal Society, Patrick Fowler from England, world known and a really good chemist, who might eventually get the Nobel Prize. He's really good. And he was listening to me and he said, oh, I set up some theories to justify how carbon behaves in those circumstances. I think what you've been saying, you know, the structures you're saying that exist in these graphs and these molecules, I think they explain them perfectly. So, and we've been working for about 20 years, you know, and there's still a lot
How wonderful.
to
And
do.
what's amazing is a lot of this stuff goes on you're in an isolated world, and this amazing stuff is going on independently to the rest of us. But what you're doing is actually creating the bedrock for what happens in the rest of humanity, which is phenomenal. That we don't pat you on the back enough about the work that you guys do, because that's
it won't be acknowledged until about, you know, sort of, I think 30 years.
Oh, gosh.
yes. Yes.
I have a
time
question
and-
for you, Amy. I'm just going to change the topic for a second, but it applies to both of you. But I'll start with Amy. I myself, and listening to you, are having a really enlightened time. But I admit I have a preconception about science, maths, physics, all these sorts of things. That it's not the most exciting thing.
That was polite.
No, I'm saying that's my preconception, and you're blowing that completely apart today. Now, I'm going to ask you, Amy, when you were younger and you were meeting boys, and you said, yes, actually, I'm a scientist and I do this and I study air particles, was that something you went, yeah, that's what I do?
Was that a showstopper?
Yeah, exactly.
Depends who the person is. Some might maybe feel a bit intimidated. But usually, no. Usually it's the other way around. It's admiration that you actually managed. Oh, really? Maths and physics, but they are so difficult. Yes, they are. And it wasn't easy to graduate. I mean, it takes a lot of hard work. It doesn't come very easy at all. But yes, then you get, even up to today, like some people in the business world don't take you seriously as a woman. So, but then either someone drops it or I drop it. Listen, I'm a scientist.
Yes.
I do use it.
It does give you a bit of credibility. Yes, I can see that it
I mean, I've had it happen before when some people come, can I speak to the owner? Yes, you can speak to me. No, the owner. Yes, I'm one of the owners. Isn't there a man in this business? Well, it's me and my business partner, my husband. Well, yes, we'll come next time then when he is
And then you
around.
say, and I'm a scientist as well. He's not. I'm owner and scientist.
Francis over here, love.
Depends on my mood, I might, yes.
Yes, that's it. You can use that one. It's mine. It's for free. Irene, you were talking in the break there about the work that you did, because we talk about the fact that women are doing much better in education than boys. Girls are outperforming boys across the world. And yet, still not necessarily moving into fields of science. And you have been involved in gender promotion in the scientific field. Why is that still needed? And tell us about the work that you've done.
I was chairperson of the Gender Issues Committee at the University of Malta for some years. And I try to promote as much as possible. By the way, there's CHOGM now.
Yes.
And in the previous CHOGM, I organized a forum called Gender and the Digital Divide. And it was fantastic because there were people from all over the Commonwealth. There was a particular prince, dressed black prince with attendants with him, really dressed in, a long gown and with a turban. And he was really nice looking, and at the end he came and said, "Oh, we really enjoy this. We know now, sort of more about women, and
well done.
and you're welcome to come to my country." I never did, but
Well, you're welcome anyway.
I'm going to. Irene, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to carry this conversation on Sunday night. We're going to be back in just a couple of days. So if you want to hear more about this, because we've come to the end of the show, unfortunately, that doesn't mean to say it's the end of this conversation. No. You have to tune in to Sunday to hear what Irene's about to say. Ladies, until Sunday, thank you very much indeed, and wishing you all the very best. Wishing you all the very best with the restaurant. Absolute favourite of mine. And I'm just waiting to hear the rest of this conversation. But thank you very much for joining us this evening.
That's right. So we'll be back with Women in Science this coming Sunday on InDemand After Hours. Yes, the rest of this story, where we'll have another glass of wine. I'll be talking about women in the scientific field with the lovely Amy and Irene.
Absolutely. If you want to find out anything more about these wonderful women and what they do, obviously tune into Sunday night, but also go onto our Facebook page, facebook.com/InDemand TV Malta.
Obviously, we can't guarantee that you'll understand exactly what they do afterwards, but we'll give it our best shot. This has been In Demand. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you Sunday.